Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group. And today we have our 3rd District Council person at large, Mr. Brandon Ellington. How are you doing, Mr. Ellington?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today, Carlos?
All right. Councilman, since you're representing the 3rd District at large, give our community a rundown what's going on in the 3rd District.
I mean, we got a lot of movement in the 3rd District. So anybody that lives on the east side of the city, I'm pretty sure you've already noticed several different infrastructure improvements, from streets that have never been paved, being paved, playgrounds actually receiving PIAC dollars. So we've been able to increase our PIAC allocation. We've been able to increase park amenities, been able to solidify a lot of the streets that I was talking about when I ran for campaign. Has actually been repaved from Cleaver and Van Brunt on up. And Van Brunt and Cleaver is one of the ones that I definitely was pinging on. And you're starting to see development and investment in the 3rd District. I would like to see a little bit more strategic development, but you are starting to see that investment happen. Yeah, and then next week, the 16th, February the 16th, I actually have a citing ordinance that I'm bringing in front of the district, and that would be creating a nonprofit organization, something similar to what we see in North Kansas City, which allows for the commingling of city funds, private funds, and also the ability for that organization to be able to do code reductions and all type of stuff. So it would pretty much resemble the NNI entity that the council funds for North Kansas City, in which they're able to do their own code violations, home improvements, various grants runs through that programs, etc. And we also passed the Office of Citizen Engagement last year. It's been a hard fight. We've still been fighting with the city manager and departments to ensure that it's working the way that the language is written, because we have a codified ordinance and interpretation doesn't work if the interpretation is outside of the definitions of the language that passed. So I mean, it's a lot that we can jump into. I don't know where you want to start.
All right. Well, for one, let's talk about Vine Street. I was reading and something about developers coming in, purchasing properties for $1 or something. Just a big fuss. Give me the lowdown on that.
Yeah, that ordinance just came out of committee. So I want to say a year ago, not about a year and a half ago, the policy committee voted out a recommendation of the development project that you're talking about. I was the only person on the policy committee that happened to vote no at that time, and that was related to the structure of the deal. There's been a lot of innuendos, personal comments, etc., that's been coming out lately from my colleague in the 3rd and going back and forth with the developers. And I think that actually heightened a lot of people paying attention to what's going on down there. So right now, the proposal is the developers will pay $1. The city is the ones that actually did the property valuation, and they evaluated it at $1. So that's what they pay. The contract requires retail and 54 housing units. There is no definition of the retail yet. There is no codification with any units that's going to be in that retail facility. One developer were pretty much on about a block and a half going around on Vine. And again, their development proposal is at least 54 apartment units and then rental space below.
I'm the cutoff king. How do you personally feel about that as Kansas City and less more as a council person?
Puts me in a weird position as a Kansas Cityan or somebody that reads
in the community.
Yeah, somebody that reads and understands contracts. I don't think it's the strongest deal for the community. I think the community could have actually got a much better development deal and even parceling off the properties in various venues. Business owners down that way. So you have a mixture of business owners on 18th and Vine. You have some business owners that are actually in city-owned facilities, and then you have one private business owner that actually owns their own business. So the business owners, they want to see something just because there hasn't been any development down there. When you talk about ownership, it creates a quagmire of ownership because currently it's vacant property that could be owned by the community if it was invested in where they can own property, or you allow a developer to develop it and they create whatever prospects that they want. And I put it out on social media. On social media, majority of my constituents had a lot of concerns about the selling of the property for $1, but almost all of my constituents that is associated with 18th and Vine, whether they own a business down there, et cetera, they want to see something happen. So it creates a very weird position in which you read details and, you know, details can be dangerous, but then public perception sometimes outweighs details.
What other things do you think that our general public 5th and 3rd district should be paying attention to?
And in the aspect of development or
just overall?
Man, we should be paying attention to allocations and how money is spent, not just what we see on the first scene. So when we see somebody is willing to do something, what are they benefiting? What is the ultimate benefit? And on the east side, that has been our biggest issue. Our biggest issue, in my opinion, has been the overly willingness to accept crumbs as opposed to starve for a steak. And that's a ideological premise, right? Some people are willing to tighten their belts and fight for what they deserve, and other people appreciate getting something because they've been ignored. And I fall in the other category. I fall in the category where I'm more willing to tighten my belt than to beg somebody for something that is insufficient. And I think East Side residents should be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to ensuring that we're getting ultimate justice underneath the law. And I'll give you an example. Highlighted the Office of Citizen Engagement when I first started talking on here. In my district, I have a lot of constituents talk about youth crime, youth programs, and opportunities. Where the Office of Citizen Engagement by language dictates that the city helps with qualifying language. So if you are trying to start a STEM education program, or if you're trying to start a workforce development program, or what have you, most of these fall up underneath the DOJ dollars. But in my community, a lot of people have been brought into the articulation. And we've been walking neighborhoods, we've been articulating almost every chance I get, because you don't have an upswell of people from the community asking the city manager, why isn't this office fully functional? Why haven't you actually hired the people in this office that's supposed to help with the writing and the coordination of the grants? What we do is we allow the neighborhood departments to come out and say, hey, we're going to work with people in the grant process. Well, that's fundamentally flawed. If you have an ordinance that dictates that this office facilitates and increases contracts via grants, why would you congratulate a department for saying that we're going to help some people get grants? We have a whole department that is supposed to increase it, but you allow them to say neighborhoods is trying to do it, which is again, fundamental issue when it comes to reading and understanding what you should have in front of you. You don't allow anybody to offer you the bottom of the cereal box when you brought the cereal.
You and myself, Brandon, have been on the same page forever. That's the only reason Cascade exists, because I really haven't taken anything that people want to give you. Because when you get that from you, they give you crumbs, and then they want you to pass false, to me, not legitimate information. They want to control you, and then if you don't give the right messages out, they take your funding, and everybody's got to eat. And now I want you to talk about how do you rate the city manager on a 1 to 10 basis?
You forgot a number.
0?
Yeah, I'm gonna give them a big fat 0. And the reason I'm gonna give them a big fat 0 is as a city manager, you're responsible for the departments. You're also responsible for promulgating any rules, policies, or regulations that comes out of the city council. when we look at our city manager, my opinion, and I can back my opinion up with documentation, my opinion that he's not an honest truth sayer. When you look at the departments, about a month or two ago, I did the presentation with several city workers in front of the city council. I did that in relation to an email that I sent out to the council and the city manager inquiring about policies. In the email rebuttal, the city manager said that my facts was wrong. In the city presentation with the city workers, my facts weren't wrong. My facts was 100% correct. And what we had was disinformation coming from the city manager's office with several resolutions and ordinances that in particular deal with so-called minority accession, whether that's some of the resolutions that was passed this year or some of the structural ordinances. We haven't seen any type of movement on that. The same when we talk about collaboration with departments. From my inquiries and my work with departments, I know there's a gap between the city manager's office and directors, and that should not be the case. So my honest opinion, I would give him a 0 because the city manager is responsible for managing the city, and I don't believe we have a city manager that's doing that. And the other aspect of that would be honesty. When you talk about issues that affect staff and workers, and even though staff and workers doesn't necessarily fall up underneath the council preview, it falls up underneath the city manager's preview. We should have ultimate trust that if you tell us a policy isn't happening, then it's not. And if we find out that it is happening, then there's more concerns. And I have a lot of concerns with what I've seen. So I'm gonna give them a 0.
All right. Let's switch up to Mayor Quentin Lucas, 1 to 10.
That's a harder one. 1 to 10. I'm gonna give Lucas like a 4 or 5. I think policy-wise, it could be more strategic. I believe that vocally, we should have a mayor that is 100% committed to the business of Kansas City and the growth of Kansas City. Yeah.
You don't think that he has represented Kansas City well?
It depends on the aspect. Articulation, I believe the mayor is extremely articulate. Intelligence, I believe the mayor is intelligent. Politically, and you said something earlier, and I'm gonna extrapolate the mayor out of this definition. You said something earlier when you talked about funding. Me personally, I have no funding restrictions or concerns. I've never outraised any of my opponents. I don't receive large donations from any entity. I've been pretty much fully funded by the community my entire existence in politics, and I've been in office for almost 12, 13 years, right? So I'm able to speak out on certain issues without worrying about backlash. I don't think everybody in the elected arena has that same positioning. So when I give my number grade, I'm not talking about personal conversations, but I remember certain issues and then votes different. I'm not just talking about the mayor. I'm generalizing a whole bunch of people here. So when I give him a 4 or 5, it's not to discredit him. I just think
he's falling short on certain things that you think are very relevant.
Yeah, but it should be brought to the forefront. And I give you an example. We have a weak mayor form of council, and most people look at that as, you know, all the council has the same premise, but we don't. So when we talk about an overt strategy or overt work, I believe that will come from the mayor's office. And if we have certain collaborations, then I believe that the 6 districts no longer are as independent. They become more singular, meaning if we're talking about universal transit and we're trying to connect all districts together, you're not gonna have a North and Southland fight. So I think it's certain techniques that could be improved upon if only business and policy is relevant and nothing else.
How do you feel about the bike lanes and all of the disruption in the 3rd district that has taken place?
Currently, we're trying to stop the bikes moving in the 3rd district. I shouldn't say stop the bikes, but stop
Yeah.
the bike lane. I feel the same way most people in Midtown feel. They don't like them. So when you drive through Midtown, I believe they create a more dangerous situation. And when you talk about the culture in Kansas City, the culture of biking is not the same as like in Portland, right? So you don't have a upswell. We have a few processions that happen yearly, but for the most part, those bike lanes remain empty.
Well,
And they
from my
create.
perspective, I'm the cutoff king. You already know that. My
No, you
audience
good.
already knows that.
No, you good.
From my perspective, all of that's part of gentrification for our community, because you said you was being nice by saying Portland, and most people know there's not a whole lot of Black people out in Portland.
Now, hold on. When you talk about the gentrification aspect, there is a body of evidence that suggests certain amenities or precursors in bike lanes, unfortunately, has been part of that conversation in the urban breakdown. So yeah.
Right. And so I think, again, it's important, as I've said to our community in general, for you to have your own digital media company, such as Cascade, What's Up Kansas City, and all our sister stations, so that you can know what's going on in your community and you can voice your opinion to your appropriate political representation. And I think that we've as a community, done a real poor job on that. But hopefully, that's going to improve. What I want to ask you about: what do you think it's going to cost to run again? This upcoming election, not just you. I'm saying I've had this conversation earlier today. I had talked to one council person. They said they thought it was going to cost at least 65 grand. And then my marketing team, I told you I was doing some things. When I was talking to them about, they was like, "What, city council?" I was like, and this is where communications. Are you paying attention? Do you know what was spent on one of the candidates on the school board to get that seat? Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that 25,000, 30. I'm saying we as a community, business and general community, have to understand what's happening, and it's been happening, but even more so in 222, that entities will spend money to get these seats on school board. You could run for school board for $2 grand once upon a time or less, but now they're controlling your educational system, and you're not understanding what you need to be doing. And so that's why I'm bringing those dollars to the council race. Now, I'm speaking to all of Kansas City, but specifically to Black people. You really need to know who's working for you from a political standpoint. You really need to know who you are, if you're given $1, where that dollar's going and who it's going to, and making sure that 90% of that dollar goes where it's supposed to go. End the story on that. What other concerns do you have?
About the upcoming race, this is what I'm gonna say. I got elected down here in 2019. So my opponent started running in 2019. So my opponent literally started running as soon as I got elected. I ain't never said anything about it. There's been certain people in close proximity that I know that's been extremely supportive. And I'm not talking about in my camp, I'm talking about in politics. So there was a pre-designed desire from some of the boulets and some of the other entities to try to, fix their problem. So in the upcoming election, all of my elections, I've been outspent by my opponents. This election, I anticipate being heavily outspent. And if anybody's watching this that's supportive of my opponent, y'all need to put all your cash up because this is not going to be a typical election for me. A typical election, you know, you run for office. I have a record. I have something I done stood on. I have something I done fought on. And I also have an Exposing the Boule campaign coming out. Since I've been on the council, I've been attacked more than I've been attacked in the entire 8.5 years, not by decisions, but by orchestrated friends. And it's a very small handful of orchestrated friends. You can even see some of that today. Not a direct attack towards me, but you very rarely see any type of media coverage on anything on the east side. But when it comes to development prospects, it's being written in the Kansas City Star. I find all of this funny and I don't believe in coincidences. But I said all that to say this. My next city council election is going to be extremely eye-opening and interesting. And for those that believe in supporting freedom fighters, reach out to me. Ellington, electellington.com or friends to elect Ellington. We're definitely looking for community contributions and small contributions. I'm anticipating and looking forward to being outspent. But I'm telling the Boule, bro, it's not going to be an ordinary campaign. Since I've been on the council, and I could put it in this context. On social media, somebody had quoted, you know, the same old politics. We don't like the same old politics. And my answer to that was, that's true, except for when people benefit off the same old politics. So I found it extremely interesting how quickly people switch up when money and leverage is involved. And I've been 10 toes down since I've been in. And I don't attack people, but I swear this next election is going to be eye-opening.
Yeah, well,
across the board.
Hold it. Let me say this. People will say, Mr. Nelson, you always coming with the grim and the negative and whatever. I'm like, I'm not attacking nobody either. If you can't stand the truth, that's your business. Don't expect for me to take your feelings in consideration when the moves that are being made politically, economically, health-wise, in my community have not worked over 50 years.
Yeah, and I'm talking about all the way around too.
Right. Now, hold it. Most of the time when I'm speaking, people say, oh, not me. No, I'm talking all the way around. If you're Black, it's happening to you. And it's time for us to wake up, move collectively, and especially at least Cascade Media and Mr. Nelson's talking to the 4 city council people that represent the 3rd and the 5th district. Got to find a way to really come together and support one another because our community is under attack. It's not about personalities.
But it goes beyond just the elected officials. And when I say it's going to be eye-opening, I'm tagging everybody. If somebody hasn't done something, it's very hard to talk about it, right? If somebody does it and you don't, it's very hard not to get talked about. So when we talk about lack thereof movement in our community, it goes beyond so-called leadership. When we talk about concern in our community, it goes beyond who is actually elected. When we talk about investing and ensuring that our community is protected long-term, it goes beyond those that are in office. And everybody has skin in the game, whether they choose to believe it or not. In this next election, I only want to represent people that understand they have skin in the game. I want to represent people that understand that it's not just me going down there articulating. You need to be coming down here articulating too. It's not just me that has desires to see the community improve. Your desires should be just as animated enough to move. And in our community, we have too much stagnation and intentional stalemate.
Intentional, that's the key. Hold it. That is the key word. A lot of stuff is intentional. And it's not being done by the outside community. It's people right in your community that's sabotaging a lot of different things. And when you say eye opener, I think my eyes open. People better, they think things were in the gutter before. There's going to be some revelations, as one might say, of truth that people are not going to appreciate, but a lot of people are going to appreciate it. Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I think more people are gonna appreciate it than not. And I'm extremely grateful that I've been given a platform to run again. Because on the council, at large is gonna have me in front of a whole bunch of audiences in which I can articulate, and then we're gonna see what happens.
So, Brandon, and closing, what would your closing words be for our audience?
You get what you deserve. If you want better, we have to do better, right? We talk about suffrage forever, and suffrage doesn't change until we take ownership. And I'm not talking about taking ownership of being in pity. No, taking ownership of everything. And that includes the ability to suffer or not. So again, I want to encourage people to be the change they talk about, throw the fists up in the air for those that understand solidarity and unity. And for those that don't, I look forward to seeing you on the battlefield.
Oh, boy, quintessential warrior for the community. As we always close with, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
Program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.